Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
international level of competitions in the areas of robotics, e-vehicle, IoT, and many others. We developed a lot of projects and POCs in the domain of emerging technologies in the specific areas of embedded systems, e-vehicles, smart cities, smart grids, smart healthcare, renewable energy, data analytics, and so on, which make our students on the most promising technocrats. A regular visit of extremely qualified professionals from academia and industries with their experience and guidance make it just the right place to learn. We prepare students for the upcoming challenges in the changing technological scenario. However, we need to be precise in imparting skill sets as the preparatory training duration is diminishing gradually. This raises expectations and expertise from the students, and everybody wants company-ready professionals. So this basically increases the responsibility on us to train students properly. The research contributions of the school are also noteworthy. The postgraduate students work on different thrust strategies of electronics such as renewable energy, image and signal processing, wireless and mobile communication, VLSI embedded systems, RF and microwave communications, etc. This strengthens the undergraduate studies also. The sponsored projects, publication, and doctoral thesis by our faculty members are also encouraging, which bolsters the research ambience in the school. A short walkthrough of the school we want to play. Professor Arindam, please play the video, which is given by Professor Satydeep Das, and is composed by him. Thank you, Varinam, for playing the video. So today's topic, for the panel discussion, has been very apt in the current scenario and the challenges we face. We have with us the galaxy of speakers, transcend the boundary and the ideals of such issues day in and day out. So we have with us Mr. Darren Menabney, the lead employee engagement, RICO, Japan. Mr. Darren leads global organizational development initiatives at RICO Company Limited, strengthening employee engagement and building a stronger global culture among RICO's 1 lakh employees. As an associate professor, he teaches the courses in creativity, critical thinking, and analytical skills to international MBA students at Graduate School of Management, Globis University. We have with us Mr. Manjunath Basudev, co-founder and director, Semtronics Microsystems. Mr. Basudev has experience of 14 plus years and worked for companies like Semtronics Microsystems Private Limited, Intersil, and GESL. He brings 10 years of technology industry experience to Semtronics finance team. Prior to Semtronics, Manjunath worked as senior design engineer at Intersil. He holds a bachelor engineering degree in electronics and communication. Also, we have with us Mr. Ramesh, senior director applications, Infineon Technologies. Mr. Ramesh involved in system design and product development, involved in breadth of activities from new ventures, product inception, platform planning to product delivery. The goal is to create and lead teams which can deliver world-class systems and solutions, managing the KIIT department at Cypress, designed and developed infrastructure software for 3G wireless and 1X video at Lucent, and 3 industrial automation products at Honeywell, one which he deployed in plants in US, India, Australia, and New Zealand. Also, we have with us Mr. Pradeep Gupta, Chairman, Cyber Media Group. Mr. Gupta is an angel investor and mentor to a number of entrepreneurs. He is the main promoter as well as chairman and managing director of Cyber Media Limited. He is an industry veteran of 40 years and highly reputed in IT industry. He is first generation entrepreneur who pioneered technology publishing in India and when he launched Cyber Media in 1982. Also, we have with us Mr. R.K. Shinoy, Senior Vice President, Engineering, Boss Engineering. Mr. Sinha is a member of Executive Leadership Team and Senior Vice President, Engineering of RBEI, a 100% subsidiary, largest technology and engineering center for Robert Bosch at a German global conglomerate. Leader with 34 years of experience in development of embedded and IoT products. He is involved in driver assistance, or he is involved in industrial and building technology, consumer goods, household appliances. Also, we have with us Dr. Satya Gupta, CEO, CDS Innovations, Chairman, India Electronic and Semiconductor Association. Dr. Gupta has 35 plus years in the industry experience. He is currently the chairman of India Electronic and Semiconductor Association, the premier industry body representing the India electronic system design and manufacturing industry. Dr. Gupta is an industry veteran, successful entrepreneur, and visionary leader in electronics and semiconductor space. So I welcome all the panelists to this panel discussion. Without wasting much time, let me request the moderator of the session to start the proceedings. Thank you, sir. Dr. Darren, please.
Thank you, Professor Ray. Thank you, everyone, for your time today as well. So I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone joining. Good evening from me here in Tokyo. We're at just past 6:20 p.m. now. I'm really excited to be here. I'd like to thank all the panelists and everyone for taking the time to join us here today on this really important session. Of course, also thanks to KIIT for organizing such a wonderful event. I'm very happy and honored to have been invited to moderate this panel with you today. So, as was mentioned, given the past few months, the world has changed quite a bit. And the topic of digital transformation has taken on a new urgency for us. I'm not sure if any of you have seen this cartoon that showed what changed your company in terms of digital transformation. Was it the CIO? No, it was COVID-19, because COVID-19 has really been a disruptive influence and has, for good and ill, changed how we work. So the past few months, the world has changed. The topic of digital transformation has taken on this new urgency. We've kind of gone through 3 years of change in the last 3 months. The CEO of my company likes to say that here in Japan. And it's very unlikely that we will return to what we used to call normal. We're in a new normal, and we will be in that new normal for the foreseeable future. So what that world will look like in the workplace and in the electronics industry matters to all of the stakeholders, all of you who have joined us here today. In particular, it'll be of interest to the students and those entering the workforce, which will be a very changed workforce from what some of us experienced in the past. So over the next hour of discussion, we're going to be hearing the thoughts on this from our expert panelists. I look forward to hearing from all of them and interacting with them, as well as interacting with the audience to have some time for Q&A at the end. It's a very interactive session. So let's get started on the formal agenda for today. Now, we hear this phrase digital transformation a lot. And let's start by understanding exactly what we mean by digital transformation. I'd like to ask each of the panelists to briefly share your view on what you think digital transformation means. And please keep your answer to within 1 or 2 minutes. What is digital transformation in your opinion? Let's start then with Rajesh. So Rajesh, what is digital transformation?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. And to begin my just a few minutes of discussion on digital transformation, first I want to say a warm hello to all the attendees, all the students, and thanks Kalinga Institute for organizing this. In terms of just like what Darren and Professor Ray kind of mentioned, we would have had this session in the normal days in the auditorium, the Kalinga Institute conclave. And now we are doing this in a virtual world. So I was just thinking about the video that Professor Ray kind of played, where we show the classrooms. Probably in the next set of videos, we may have to show how good is the connection on WebEx and other kind of team rooms, right? So having said that, for me, digital transformation kind of splits itself into 3 parts. The first one is where we do digitization, use of tools, use of automation within a particular system. It could be a system where we do validation of a particular silicon, we do software development, the use of digitization tools in that system. And the second part is where we actually have the systems collaborate to each other, communicate with each other, and that would be more like IoT, where systems actually transfer data. And the third part is where we actually have connected data networks, and connected data networks where data is the king. So if you look from a skill set standpoint for the students, the first part is where you actually look at Python for automation. And the second one is where you actually have systems communicate, it's IoT. And the third one is where you actually start looking at ML and look at things like artificial intelligence and build your skill set around these 3 areas. So that's what it is for me, Darren.
Great. Thank you very much for that interesting 3 points: tools and automation, systems collaboration, and communication across networks, and the importance of AI and machine learning as a future skill set for our students. Thank you for that. Let's move on to Manjunath. Manjunath, please share your view with us on what is digital transformation.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you, Kalinga University, for giving me an opportunity as being a panelist in this. And as Darren was saying, and as Mr. Ray was actually pointing out, we were literally sitting at the conclaves and having in-person conversations earlier. And as Rajesh pointed out, and it is at the comforts of your home, and you're having this conversation today. And everything, earlier you would spend literally hours of time traveling to a conclave and to be there, and the amount of time that used to be spent to just meet the requirements. And today everything is shortened, and you can just have this conversation. Darren is sitting in Tokyo, Rajesh and I suppose most of the panelists, some of them are sitting in Bangalore, and some of them are sitting in Bhubaneswar, and all over the world. And this is the transformation that it has caused. And we are compelled to, in fact, today, given the pandemic situation that is there, today. Earlier it was at our ease, but like today we are compelled to take this option. And as I see, like coming from a semiconductor background, also like I would say that like the whole world is analog, if I have to mention that, and you digitize that, and then you take it and you collect the data for data analytics, and then the IoT platform that you see today, that the way it has transformed over a period of time. I view it from the digital navigation from this perspective. If I have to talk about, I just view this from a simple telegraph message to a smartphone that we have today, how information is being transferred. If I have to put it in simple words, that's my view about digital navigation.
Thank you for that, Manjunath. That was interesting, that the fact that place has become much less important than it used to be. Place has disappeared to a certain extent. And I like that metaphor from the telegraph to the smartphone over the last several months. Thank you for that. Moving on then, let's hear from Satya. Satya, your view on digital transformation.
Darren, greetings to everybody. Welcome all the students and KIIT for organizing this. I think digital transformation is a process which has been going on for years. Right? Basically, we have gone from stage to stage, and in the current situation, last 6 months has basically hastened the process. Basically, put it in a very fast pace. The way I see the digital transformation, I'll just take the scope how it is transforming the workspace. Okay, so I think if you look, people talking for last 7-8 years that basically everybody is saying that you can be sitting at a beach and doing your work, right? But it remained kind of basically unfulfilled, basically prophecy, right? But in the current circumstances, that has become suddenly a reality that you could be sitting anywhere and doing your work, right? So the way I see the future of the work getting transformed by basically the technology, not just digital, all kind of technologies. The current pandemic has basically scratched the surface of what is possible, right? But if you look at the type of the technologies which are being developed in the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? If they start getting applied in next 3 to 4 quarters, take basically AR, VR, robotics, right? They can completely make the virtual work environment feel like basically physical work environment, and also very productive way of doing things, right? We are just right now using the video and communication as basically the tools for doing the collaborative work at the workplace because that was the necessity of the hours. But given little bit time, 2 to 3 quarters, I envisage that basically technology like robotics, AR and VR make basically even this conference look like as if we are sitting next to each other, right? And that's what basically I envisage future workplace which will be transformed through the technologies. I don't want to call just the digital technologies, all different type of the technology which are user interfaces, analog, somebody said. If you combine all those technologies, I think that's the future of the workspace.
Great, thank you, Satya. Making the really good point, reminding us that this is nothing new. This process has been going on for years, but it's accelerated. And I like that phrase. We've only scratched the surface in terms of how this will affect work and technology. A lot of surprises ahead for us. Next, let's hear from Pradeep. So Pradeep, your view on what we mean by digital transformation.
Thank you, Darren, for giving me this opportunity to speak. And it's really an honor to all the students of KIIT. Darren, I think we need to discover a new word in the lexicon. To talk about digital transformation is passing. This fork in the road has meant that it is no longer just desirable to have digital in your strategy. It's not just that you need to have an essential element of digital in your strategy. It's not that it is a vital piece. It is an imperative piece. It has to be inbuilt. So I think we now have to talk about perhaps a digital necessity or a digital imperative in terms of what we need to look at. you look at each and every industry, the way every industry, because of this fork in the road, is completely changing to a new phase. The word smart is getting added to whatever you are doing, from end to end, all varieties of technology coming in. I think we are going to talk about a completely new way of looking at things.
Great, thank you for that. So we need a new word. I love that new concept, digital imperative or digital necessity. It's not an option anymore. Thank you for that. Let's hear finally from RK. So RK, what do you think we're talking about when we say digital transformation, or what should we be talking about?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm glad that we can do this on a virtual platform compared to personally being there at KIIT. But of course, I enjoyed that as well, coming to the campus, and I still remember that. Yeah, for me, the digital transformation, I think we'll have to go a little bit back in time. If you look at how things changed, it took almost, say, 13 years of TV to reach, say, 50 million users, or it took around 3 years finally for internet to reach 50 million users. But platforms like Twitter took less than a year. Now, when I look at how the world changed in terms of working from anywhere or home office, I think this happened within a week, I would say, in most of the companies. So reaching 50 million users who switched their way of working, which happened in such a rapid pace, is definitely because of the digital platforms and the transformation that was going on, but it got accelerated with COVID. Now, coming to my industry, I come from mobility, and in mobility for digital transformation means actually on one side on the products, whether it is automated, connected, electrified, or shared mobility, which is all possible only because of the digital transformation that has happened and the amount of connectivity that provides information as well as features that are possible. Whether you take an electrified car, it's not possible without having a connectivity which is able to negotiate, and we're talking about battery over cloud, etc. Where we earlier thought about physical items, now we're talking about more and more items which are on the cloud, and all the services are provided over the air. In fact, updating features as well over the air. Of course, when it comes to the way people manage this, when you look at the technologies that have gone into these products, compared to the classic way of developing, where we're doing a lot of model-based development and doing a lot of connectivity topics, etc. Now it is talking about features which are possible only because of AI or ML. A lot of data is crunched, and we are taking decisions. Whether if you look at automated car, for example, having information coming from around 60 sensors and being computed on a faster pace for decision making for completely robotized vehicle to run. It's simply not possible without digitization. And this is the major thing that has happened as far as the mobility industry is concerned. But coming specific to how we work, I think that is one thing which has changed while we are planning, I think last 4-5 years, at least in mobility space, to go more and more virtual working. It never happened. We had a lot of plans, but in our industry, it was very difficult. But COVID made it happen. I think within a week, 100% of our associates now work from home. We use virtual platforms to do our testing. We are able to collaborate using collaborative platforms. And guess what? The efficiency of the whole system has absolutely not gone down. Even though there are so many discussions that this may drop, I think we find that it's almost same as how it was before. So for me, this accelerated change using the digital platform is, for me, the digital transformation in the industry I'm in. Thank you.
Thank you, RK. I love that last phrase. I just was quickly scribbling it down. Efficiency with accelerated change is a nice way to describe what's happened recently, and making the good point that we don't really see the efficiency, the productivity losses with people moving to remote work. So thank you, panelists. Wide range of views there, and there's a couple of comments I think we'd like to dig into a little bit more as we go through some of our other questions today. So let's move on from the perspective of what is digital transformation. We have some sense of what the panelists think about this, to some more specific points about today's topic. So, digital transformation, digital imperative, digital revolution, all these phrases. I like to first question. I'd like to point to Rajesh. So, Rajesh, how has this digital revolution, along with things like you mentioned, like increased automation, how do you think this affects the culture and organizational development in the electronics industry?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So I'll start with an example. So last year we hired two ladies from Kalinga Institute, Oitri and Ashmita, and they are now working for the validation group. And validation of a microcontroller is completely automated. It's no manual testing. So from their standpoint, in being able to know about a new feature, a new IP block, converting that knowledge into an automated script, putting together that automation framework, and making sure that that part of knowledge is digitized is what they are doing. And from that standpoint, they're building their skill set. And what I see is that digitization kind of brings in terms of culture, a move towards efficiency, where we want to actually obsolete ourselves and learn new things. The obsolescence portion goes into the machine, and we start learning new things. And similarly, we do a lot of capacitive touch sensing at Cypress, and now which we are part of Infineon. So gesture recognition, which was earlier kind of manual algorithms, we are now developing machine learning on top of that, so that we could use those machine learning algorithms to decide what the gesture is. So we essentially train the model with data that's available. What does it mean for an engineer who is working on it? Is that he's actually picking up new skills in the area of machine learning. So from a standpoint of culture, it drives efficiency. From a standpoint of organizational development, we actually end up retaining talent because we actually give them the latest tools. We allow them to learn the latest technologies. And it's always fun. You don't want to do what you were doing yesterday. You want to come in the next day and do something new. So that's the beauty about digitization, as how I see from a culture and org development standpoint.
Thank you for that, Rajesh. So this idea of obsoleting yourself as a good thing. This means then that we have a constant need to we might use this phrase learning agility later as well, but requires a culture and a workforce which has learning agility to always be learning, constantly be obsoleting yourself. Any of the other panelists would like to build on what Rajesh said, or have your own thoughts about how this is changing culture and organizational development?
Sure, I can go. First thing which is there is that now there is going to be a need for a lot of contactless. Now, if there are contactless solutions which are required, then it will, various kind of manufacturing. How can I have contactless supply chains? How can I have contactless manufacturing? How can I have my entire delivery happening in a contactless manner? I look at a bank, and again, in terms of the bank, if it is contactless, how can I do my risk assessment and so on? I mean, if I look at a simple thing like I need to get my hair cut, and can I have a contactless solution for a haircut? Right? So it's not just that it is going to change only in terms of businesses, in terms of B2B, but also in terms of B2C. You pick up any activity and you add the word smart in front of it, and you will start looking at an electronic solution coming out of that. So that's one side. The other one is customer experience. Customer experience will also require huge amount of changes taking place in and because of these contactless, because of these customer experiences which are driven by various sensors which are there, the feedback which starts coming, the large amount of data processing and so on. All of that is, again, electronics is going to be absolutely at the core of the things. Look at healthcare. If you want to give a customer experience which is different in the area of healthcare, you need to automatically start looking at robotics. You need to be looking at various kind of diagnostic tools, all varieties of transformations, all varieties of revolutions taking place in terms of those industries.
Thank you for that, Pradeep. This is interesting about the word data has come up so many times as well. Data or data, depending on pronunciation, I suppose, has come up quite a few times, and I think we'll have to return this point later about how data can also define the corporate culture, organizational development. Thank you for that. Let's move on to our another question. And I'd like to aim this one at Manjunath. So Manjunath, this is a very broad question, though, and I think we'll hear from your panelists. Broadly speaking, for this digital transformation, what do you think is the role that HR should play? I mean, I'm an HR person. I'd love to hear this myself. What do you think we should be doing to facilitate this transformation?
Thank you, Darren. So if I have to tell you, the role of HR is more important today. So as I was saying, right, like we all are sitting in our confines at home. If not for this pandemic, I suppose we would be sitting in office and having conversations leading to new project definitions or whatever it would be to move the business over there at the office, and there would be personal interaction there. And along with them, you would also see that like employee bonding happens at the office space. And now that was missing totally in this space, where you're confined to your homes. You don't know what your employees are dealing. So you would just say that, okay, if I have to tell you particularly about SMEs, where the given situation, it has brought down almost some of the SMEs into a kind of NPA situations, where they have to cut down on costs and all, and it does mean that like some of the pay scale cuts to the employees also. But you don't know what the employees are dealing with. And it is very important that the role of the HR over here, where he has a personal touch with the employees, and not just the HR, if I have to tell you, the promoters of the company in case of SMEs and the management as such, where they have personal touch. And if I have to just share with you, I had this, I'm just sharing this, what actually I had with a few days ago with one of my colleagues. So we have been online day in and day out at looking at various project executions, how things are going. But I was not in touch with like as to what is he dealing with. Like he had some personal issues, but we normally have conversations in office during office hours where we would see that like when they start sharing, so when you start sharing, many of the things gets resolved. But over here, people are confined to their homes. So if I have to tell you, the role of the HR is not just framing certain policies, henceforth, it requires more amount of human touch, because humans are social beings, in fact, to say. They are not confined to be alone.
Thank you for that, Manja. So would you say then that there's been a perception in the past that HR is seen as kind of a rule-based organization, as kind of a gatekeeper, and someone who, as an organization, that just kind of follow the processes, follow the rules? That needs to change, and there needs to be more of a human touch or a
Absolutely. That's the perception that people have about HR and the policies, that HR policies, like you talk about them. And that needs to change totally.
Thank you for that. It's a really interesting point to build on that for any of the other speakers. HR needs to be seen less as a gatekeeper organization, as a rule maker. How can we do that? Do you think in your organizations? And have any ideas or suggestions? Would love to do that from the other speakers.
Yeah, so I think right now more than ever, the role of HR in organizations is absolutely paramount, because of the fact of these changes that we were talking about. There is a complete restructuring of organizations that is happening. There is complete reskilling of individuals that is required. And at both these levels, HR becomes absolutely, essential to take part, to be able to these two changes.
So, taking on what Pradeep rightly said, it's not only very important, it becomes very challenging as well in terms of HR in these times. I would say, Darren, probably the rule should be digitized, and the human touch should be actually the core of HR. Is a way of how we could transform. The rules need not be actually very evident. It's just available whenever somebody fills up a form or there is documentation. People can read, know about it. Nobody has to inform anybody about a rule. As much as probably HR now conducting some online games, even for a group of individuals, is quite significant, and it adds a lot of I would say energy within teams which are now sitting in their homes and probably coding and testing and going around. So I think looking at those unique ways in which HR can enable each one of us is quite interesting. And I think in terms of improvement, I think it is every individual's, I would say, drive rather than HR. HR is only an enabler. If suppose somebody wants to learn something, it is up to that particular individual to put steps on how to learn a particular course or learn a particular skill. HR can only enable. So these are my thoughts on how HR can play a role within a corporation.
Thank you for that, Rajesh. I just interesting connection there between two things we heard earlier from Pradeep mentioned earlier about customer experience. HR needs to think more of the employee experience mindset as well, and also this point about reskilling. From what you were saying, it sounds like HR must also play a heavy focus on reskilling ourselves to get better at knowing, for example, what can we digitize, what can we automate, what can we apply with like robotic process automation versus what do we have to get better at, the human side of things, the employee engagement, the dealing with people who are maybe dealing with retrenchment or downsizing in their organizations. This is a really, really important role going forward. Thank you for sharing that. Any quick thoughts from the other panelists on this topic before we move on?
Yeah, I think for sure, I think HR plays a big role, especially now when we went virtual. What I see is HR had to jump in and organize many of them because typically we are used to face-to-face, whether it's a team building or connect with the teams. I think a lot of platforms got installed very quickly, whether it is recruitment or onboarding or team activities, which is HR has taken a lead role. The other aspect, very important, is while we work from home, of course, it is important that we also look at the health and wellness. What HR in at least our organization did was to look at what platforms can be given to ensure that associates are, able to keep up to their health and wellness, through various activities, whether it's through some app to track it or to organize some additional events for yoga, etc. These are things earlier were looked at only face-to-face. But I think the digital platforms helped really to also deploy these in a broad-based manner and reach out to all the associates in our company, for example, with 20,000 people. And I see that everyone takes this positively and they're getting accustomed to these new way of managing things coming from HR as well.
Thank you for that, RK. The interesting point you made about adding a platform. HR has to do something with that because we have to, I think, teach managers how to lead differently. For example, you can't just see a virtual meeting as being a regular meeting plus a camera. So I think that's another important area where the reskilling comes in. And I love this point about health and well-being becoming digital as well. Everything really is becoming digital. It's the point where you have digital yoga apps, exactly, formerly a face-to-face event. Thank you. Satya, quick thoughts from you on this point?
I don't have any HR experience as I never did a HR role, but basically being part of multiple startups, right? I think certainly a lot of startups which are part of SME are under a lot of stress during this time because they are the most affected entities as they don't have the reserves of the large companies and so on and so forth. So I think one of the things which we are advising to our basically friend companies and so on and so forth, make employees part of the basically the whole problem, not just basically you prescribe a pay cut or something. Make them understand what the company is going through, what will it take company to come out of it, and make them part of the problem and the solution. As if basically this is a one big family of 20, 25, 30 people, which is typical size of the startup, right? So that's the only way we can deal with this problem, because in startup, if you lose people, right, it's very, very, means 2 people may mean 10% of your workforce, right? So I think it's very critical that we make them basically part of the thought process, part of the problem, part of the solution, so that they basically together with the basically senior people in the company can address whatever we are going through. Certainly, it's a short-term blip. I think startups will become much stronger because the type of the innovation needed to make this digital transformation, which everybody is talking about, that is going to come primarily from the startups as they are the innovation engine. So they will spring back. But for riding this low, I think employees have to be part of the basically feel part of the company, feel part of the solution themselves.
Thank you for that. That was interesting that the perspective of the startups that, my image with startups would have been that the culture is more collaborative and cooperative, but I guess more needs to be done in terms of having all the employees feel like there's transparent communication, they're part of the decision-making process, they're part of the solutions as well. I like the way you phrase that, part of the problem solving and part of the solution as well. Satya, on that point, maybe digging a bit more deeply into how SMEs and startups are coping with digital transformation more broadly, maybe than just this HR situation. What do you see? How do you think SMEs and startups are dealing with what we've gone through in the past 5 months or so?
See, biggest problem for SMEs is that basically their customers are down, right? Because they don't have large work sales for something, and they do a lot of business through personal contacts. For that, I think the physical meetings were required, right? So till we get back onto track with basically virtual customer meetings and all those things, the business is basically severely affected, right? They can continue to do the development as everybody else is basically getting accustomed, but I think their income is severely affected, and typically a startup does not have big cash reserves, right? So that's the big problem they are dealing with. A lot of governments are trying to basically provide short-term loan to SMEs so that basically they can ride the wave, or basically some other mechanisms like they are giving relaxation on paying the provident fund contribution or TDS contributions. So these kind of the small measures can help startup conserve the cash and take the basically that cash for more employee welfare than more statutory requirements and so on and so forth. These are some of the things which can be done, but ultimately the business has to pick up for a startup to survive, right? I think it started happening. We feel that we are almost 2/3 way from basically where we need to be to recover the lost ground. I think it's still 1/3 of the way to go. Manufacturing companies are more impacted than basically knowledge companies. So I think because their operations took much more labor shortage, physically going to the factories and so on and so forth, right? But I think from whatever data, the macro data is coming around, I think recovery is happening pretty fast. We are not there yet, but I think probably another month or two, we should be able to get to 90% of the pre-COVID situation.
Thanks for that, Satya. I just want to build on one, if I can follow up on one question with you. You pointed, of course, manufacturing business ventures are particularly down. What about the other perspective? Do you see anything change positively for small businesses who are involved in services? Anything changing for them in a positive way?
Okay.
Somebody else wants to take it. Pradeep, you want to say something?
Sure, I can take that. So, Darren, there are a large number of startups that I've been mentoring, and I have seen the sort of a change that has come about in the startup ecosystem. For some, it actually worked out to be a great opportunity, right? I mean, there were some people who were in healthcare, and suddenly they found actually that the business in that area actually went up. Okay, but those were few cases, right? But in a lot of cases, businesses actually, the startups that have done well are the ones that have pivoted. Okay, I'll give you an example. A company which was selling momos decided to start a complete operation where they were actually doing essential supplies of food stuff. Okay, so they completely transformed their supply chain in terms of a single product to multiple products. There was a company which was in lingerie manufacture, which immediately went into PPEs and so on, masks and so on, and therefore pivoted the entire business. And not just B2C, but I can give you B2B examples also. A company which was actually doing logistics for airports and so on went in for logistics solutions that are required by e-commerce companies. So there were different kind of pivoting possibilities which were there. Some of them actually have raised money during this time. So I know of people who've shown that if they are resilient and if they have actually rode over this crisis, investors love them, because then they know that their business case is built on solid grounds. Okay, so you need to look at challenges and you need to convert those challenges into opportunities.
Thank you for that. I like that point that investors love the ones who have pivoted successfully as well. Just if I could push this question a little bit further, the businesses, the startups, the small businesses who were already in the digital space before, for example, those who were doing delivery services or those who were doing platforms, how has their world changed because of this?
So complete transformation of those businesses has happened. Take a thing like my own industry, which is the media industry. The way the media industry has transformed in the last 6 months is absolutely, at a different kind of a scale. You look at the way television media and the way OTT has happened. More and more films are now not getting released on screens but are getting released on OTT. If you look at the interaction that we were doing with our community, most of that is now happening over webinars and so on. A lot of that thing has shifted from to lead oriented activities and so on. So there is this complete new way of looking at every business.
Okay, thank you for that. Other panelists in this point about how you think small businesses or startups have come to terms of this digital transformation from our other panelists? No takers?
Yeah, I would wish Pradeep actually suggested, right? Like there have been opportunities that have been created during this pandemic. I was just having a conversation with one of my customers who was actually into the medical field, where they have actually transitioned, where they built X-ray machines. So it has been a total transformation in their business scale now. So it's just that like you're not stopped by the circumstances around. You just go beyond those circumstances. And that is where the startups have the energy to do that. That's what the investors love.
Thanks for that. RK, you were going to add something to that too?
Yeah, I was just about to add. Actually, we engage with many startups in our engineering, especially for development of electronic products. What has changed is also some startups which are focusing on virtual working or simulation. These startups, the products are now very much usable. For example, we have MIMC. Normally, we are used to going to labs to test all our products, which is a pretty expensive aspect, as well as we need people in the office or in labs. Whereas we've engaged with a startup which has actually had a tool which they're developing for simulating the MIMC. And this is something which accelerated, and it doesn't need anybody to be in office, but you can sit anywhere we are. Recently, when I was just discussing with our teams, I realized, in fact, they're not even in Bangalore. Some of the people are sitting somewhere in Kerala, and you never know when you are in a meeting or in a test setup. You have teams virtually distributed across India, and they're actually involved in this virtual testing, which is a good thing to happen, because otherwise, large companies, like including Bosch, we would have taken much longer time to actually look at and try out these virtual platforms for validation, especially on hardware. And software was well known because you have software in loop, etc. But hardware, it's a change which I think now it's getting pushed to make it happen in a much faster way when you talk about electronic products.
Great, thank you for that, gentlemen. Actually, this is just interesting how this leading to maybe our next question. Everyone's brought up the point, like, let's see, I think originally Satya made the point about low cash risk, even with government support, that employees have to be comfortable with volatility more than they were before in the current world. And next point was, I think, from Manjunath, when you change scale, you have to learn faster. So I think there's an element of learning agility required. And RK just mentioned, where is everybody? We don't know. It doesn't matter. You have to have a workforce that's better at remote work. So the skill set is also changing in terms of the talent in digital and non-digital businesses. More broadly, and back to the talent topic, I'd like to turn this next question over back to Pradeep. Pradeep, for companies that are thinking about hiring now, or the near future when things have stabilized somewhat, Pradeep, what do you think? What kind of talent should they be looking at hiring in the near future or the not near future?
Yeah, so most businesses are today thinking that how can I recession-proof my business, right? Same is the thing which applies as far as employees are concerned. How can I recession-proof my entire staff which is there? How can I? And I think the same thing will apply for students who are also coming into the industry. That how recession-proof themselves. For example, in the last 6 months, when we do a full restart, 10% of the jobs that were there in my organization will no longer be the same sort of job roles which were there in the past. Okay. So therefore, there is necessity for people to be retrained. It is necessary that people are understand what are the changes that have taken place, and therefore should be ready for that. So I think in terms of hiring today, the most important thing for an organization is to look at the flexibility. How good a learner the potential employee is, and therefore how they can fit in different kind of job roles that are there. The job roles that are there right on top today, Professor Ray earlier mentioned that we make company ready students. The jobs that the companies require today are not going to the jobs that they will require 5 years from today, or in just 5 years. Yeah. So therefore, the ability to adapt, the ability to be able to relearn is something which is going to be very, very important. That is what HR professionals, when they're doing their interviews, should be judging employees on.
Great, thank you for that. So simply hire for employees who have the flexibility, the ability to move into different roles, and the ability to be a good learner as well. This reminds me of something that was said earlier. I think it was by Rajesh about obsoleting ourselves as well. We're trying to obsolete ourselves. Very, very similar theme there as well. Anyone else like to, very quickly say what should companies be hiring for in future to deal with digital transformation?
I would say just taking on the same thought process of what Pradeep said, flexibility, adaptability. But one other aspect is one should be ready to probably let go of a certain skill set, because there's some risk involved in moving into a new skill set. So I think I sometimes end up with some individuals who would like to continue to work in that similar field, not willing to change, would like to continue in that area of work. And I've also seen individuals who are willing to take that risk, willing to take on something new. I think the next generation, the next new normal is about people who are willing to take that additional risk within the protection of an organization, but willing to take that risk and willing to learn new skills, but still letting go of something that they're pretty good at that point in time. Those guys become the pioneers in terms of setting up the new skill set that they will learn.
Thank you for that, Rajesh. I like this idea of being good at unlearning or letting go. Sounds like reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Yoda, one of my favorite characters, of course. You must unlearn. Yes, very good point there. Thank you. I see a lot of Star Wars fans here as well. Let's move on to the next question. This one, I guess, is for RK. RK, a little bit. We've talked a little bit about this. We haven't been a bit looking at the present and the past, but what do you think? If we look ahead, near-term, short-term future, what does it hold for the electronics industry in terms of the organizations and the culture and how we engage with our workforce? What would you predict we can look forward to in the next few years?
Yeah, I think compared to before, as we already talked about, the change is so fast now in terms of technology as well as the tool chains we use and the skills that are needed. So the stable organizations which used to be the past, which are heavily line oriented, is no longer valid. I think organization can survive with a strong sort of line organization. Things are moving much faster towards, we have to be purpose-oriented organization where you have purpose teams delivering results for a given project or given development or any aspect they're working on, which means it's more of an agile development, agile working style. And to people who can manage those, also there would be changes. Earlier, the program manager skills that were needed have to be reskilled to actually manage these agile teams in a different way. Second is, of course, we talked about working with virtual teams. In fact, we also piloted in the last couple of months more of crowdsourcing, because sometimes it's really not known who really is best at doing a particular thing. So we are now floating some of the complex requirements across in the organization, and we see that people are very keen to take these challenges and work on it and deliver results. Of course, this is possible when you have a team which is self-learning, using the learning platforms, learning new tool chains. And I think, like Rajesh mentioned already, they should be ready to forget certain things which they might have learned earlier but may not be relevant in the future. So those are the guys, and in the proper organizational structure, which is designed for this future style of working that is going to be successful. So basically, the organization have to be more agile and nimble and not a fixed hierarchical structure which will not be successful in these changing times, especially in the electronic industry.
So really, the future, we need to have flatter organizations, less of a hierarchy as well. What do you think about this? Reminded me of this idea of we organize our companies not around project teams, well, on teams, but we organize more around a contingent workforce where there's a much greater use of freelancers and they're brought in for specific projects as opposed to having we have a smaller workforce in the future with lots of project professionals brought in. Do you see that possibly happening, and then that being able to be leverage remote work that way by having a wider pool of project members as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this one example of the crowdsourcing, what I mentioned, was in that direction. But for sure, the freelancers is another way of looking at things. We believe that certain organizations need unique skills, but for a very limited or a planned time. And I think for freelancers, I think this would be an excellent opportunity. If they're really good at a particular thing, they can actually work as freelancers for specific companies. And we also have started looking at this option on how we can engage such people, even if there is a long-term project. But there are certain elements which are where you need a specific skill, and somebody can do this very well. So we can actually give this assignment out. We can get this integrated. So I think this engagement with startups as well, where there can be either freelancers or startups who can actually deliver parts of the solution which can be integrated for larger solution will be the way to go as well.
Great, thank you for that. Other panelists. So again, building on what was mentioned from RK, move away from project-based, to project-based, away from core teams. Any other panelists have a quick comment on this within about 1 minute or so?
Only one other angle, Darren, is in terms of security. I think security in terms of the equipment that connect to company systems, security in terms of who is actually accessing the network is going to be a pretty big field going forward as we digitize. I just thought there's something that we did not think of in this discussion. So I think it can be a very good area for students to kind of skill themselves in the area of security.
I would just like to add one thing, Darren. Okay, Satya, go.
Yeah, 2 words, right? You asked about the extended workforce. The way, at least I see, the 2 type of the contingent basically workforce. One is just basically additional resources, and one is basically skill-based contingent workforce. So I think generic outsourcing with the augmentation mode is going to go down, and skill and project-based, whether it's the freelancing or outsourcing, right? That is going to pick up. I think the generic outsourcing in terms of the resources is going to be severely hit in the coming time.
Thank
So
you,
Darren, I just wanted to add one thing, and that is, whatever be the job, today understanding of customer is something which is very. So even if you're a research guy, earlier product cycles were that you took a year to develop a product, 3 years to sell it. Today you have to develop it in 1 month, you have to sell it in 3 months. So you have to be very, very close as far as your customers are concerned, and and that is something that I think most people coming into the HR workforce should prepare themselves for.
Great. Thank you for that, Pradeep. So this is a great segue. So understanding the customer, and as you mentioned before, security is a good career choice in the future as well. We are a little bit over time because we've had a great discussion, but I'd like to just wrap up very quickly by asking each of the panelists in 30 seconds or less, one piece of advice for the students who are here. What career advice would you give the students we've talked about today? 30 seconds or less. Let's follow the same order before. Start with Rajesh. So Rajesh, advice for students.
Unlearn, be brave, and go ahead and conquer the world.
Thank you for that. Learn, be brave. What was the last one?
I said unlearn.
And unlearn, of course. Yes, thank you for that. All right, Madhana.
Be brave and conquer the world.
We have some background noise there.
Develop the muscle to adapt.
Adapt. Okay, thank you, Madhana. Adapt. Satya.
I suggest basically students to focus on fundamentals, because the things like machine learning may appear to be panacea. Basically, take a model, throw everything at it, and problem will get solved by itself. I think I see that basically that of the basically among a lot of people, right? ML or AI is not panacea. Get to fundamentals of AI and ML, understand what it is. Throwing a problem at model and not understanding what you're trying to solve and what are the complexity of the problem is not going to take you anywhere. So ML is just a tool. It's not basically panacea. I think we should all be cognizant of these things.
Thank you.
Both for teachers and students. Teachers also have to go and teach the fundamentals behind ML, not just the use of ML.
Okay, thank you for that. Fundamentals. Pradeep.
My one sentence is think like an entrepreneur.
Okay, think like an entrepreneur. Very nice, simple, and spot on advice. And RK.
I would say be authentic, be hands-on, and be systems level thinking. Basically, don't stop learning.
Thank you for that. This theme of learning has come up quite a bit. So just to wrap up, if I may put my own 2 cents in here, there's 2 words we haven't heard yet, which would be my advice to students: creativity and have fun. Let's wrap up of there, and let's turn it over now to the Q&A, and let's hear from some of our students and guests. So we will turn it over to the Q&A portion of the event. Before we do that, again, a big round of applause for all of our panelists. We'll still hear from you, but I'd like to thank you now for those great insights you've given to our audience. Thank you very much. Q&A.
Yeah. Thank you for all the esteemed panel members for their valuable inputs regarding the event topic. So I like to thank all my esteemed panel members like Darren Menabney from Ryuk, Japan. He is the moderator for moderating the total panel thing. Mr. Manjunath Vasudev, co-founder and director from Semtronics Electronics. Mr. Rajesh Ramesh, senior director application for Infineon. Earlier it is known as Cypress Semiconductor. Mr. Pradeep Gupta, chairman Cyber Media Group. Mr. R.K. Senai, Senior VP from Bosch Engineering, and Dr. Satya Gupta, CEO for CDS Innovation and Chairman IESA. Thank you all of you for giving your valuable inputs. I like to also thank our founder sir, VC sir, Pro VC ma'am, and Register sir for giving their valuable inputs whenever the event is there. I like to thank our director sir, Dr. Arun Kumar Ray, for motivating and supporting us throughout the event. I like to thank Saranjit Singh sir and Kumar Mohanty sir from TNP side for their constant support. I also like to thank all my esteemed faculty members from School of Electronics Engineering, those who are the participant of this event and listening very minutely in this event, and they are giving their valuable inputs also while we are going to coordinate this event. Also, I like to thank my student coordinators, those who are working background in the to make this event very successful. They are actually working very hard so that all the students from School of Electronics are able to listen this thing through YouTube and maybe from Facebook Live. So thank you all of you. Now I like to hand over this venue to our director, sir, to just conclude the event. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Arinam. So very wonderful session with all the panel members. They have gone into details of this digital transformation and different aspects of it, and also gave very good clue to the students to prepare themselves for the next new challenges. So I thank all the panel members for their time and patience for giving this panel discussion. I thank all of you who have participated in this event. So thank you very much. So I would like to close the meeting for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Signing
Bye-bye.
off.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, sir. Bye. Bye.
Audio